Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. I'm continuing my series for A-level history about Germany 1918 to 45. So I'm looking at the Third Reich. That's from 1933 to the end of the era, and how the Third Reich was a police state. Very soon after the Nazis came to office, they founded the Gestapo, Geheime Staatspolizei, or secret state police. The Gestapo was not tasked with ordinary policing duties such as catching pickpockets or dealing with those who are drunk and disorderly. It was strictly political policing to round up the opponents of Nazism, as well as those ethnic groups that the Nazis had selected for persecution. So they existed in addition to the ordinary police. They weren't beat bobbies. The Gestapo were first of all only in Prussia, but Prussia was a huge state, and very soon the Gestapo were expanded to cover the whole of Germany. So Heinrich Himmler, as well as being Reichsführer SS, was also the head of the Gestapo. Anyway, so the Gestapo, they used torture as a matter of course, and they were not constrained by the law. They were just open mail, warrant or not. Now, some of them had been professional police officers beforehand, and those ones tend to be a bit more by the book. Those who were simply Nazi appointees with minimal police training would flout the law willy-nilly just in order to achieve results, which meant terrorizing dissidents. So some ordinary citizens volunteered to help the Gestapo by reporting anything they considered suspicious, such as someone just saying good morning rather than using the Nazi greeting. So the Gestapo were kept abreast of who were the asocials, as the Nazis would call them, dipsomaniacs, the long-term unemployed, gypsies, anyone who was unusual, homosexuals and so forth. Weimar Germany was very liberal. Indeed, Berlin had been perhaps the gay capital of the world. So the Gestapo took a very lively interest in individuals and organizations who might be a focus for resistance, youth groups, churches and so on. Trades unions, well, they were shut down pretty quick. On May Day 1933, the trades unions were granted their holiday. The trades unionists campaigned for that. And then the very next day, their offices were raided, and a dummy trades union was set up under Dr. Robert Ley, which is the German Labour Front, but there was no right to strike. So the Gestapo kept an eye on the Lutheran Church and the Roman Catholic Church, didn't persecute them, certainly not at first. There were clergy who spoke out against the Third Reich. Later on, they were rounded up, imprisoned, and in a few cases killed. So the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Quakers were squashed. They existed underground, were never quite wiped out. So what else? There was the SS, obviously, Schutzstaffel, as protection squad, who were Hitler's bodyguard, but they were really the shock troops of Nazism, those who were most seeped in the ideology. That included the Waffen-SS, as an armed SS, who did fight in the battlefield and carried out more than a few atrocities. The Death's Head units who ran the concentration camps and indeed extermination camps, the Sicherheitsdienst, as in security service within the SS. So this is another thing about Nazism, why the Third Reich was said to be a polycratic regime, as in many powers, overlapping areas of competence. And so there were turf wars as the different government agencies were squabbling over whose responsibility a certain area was, or indeed disclaiming responsibility. So the SD, the Gestapo, the ordinary police, army intelligence as well, that's Abwehr, they were all arguing over who was responsible for this and that. Anyway, so the Nazis divided Germany into various units, from a Gau, which is a large one like the city of Berlin, right down to Zelle, as in cell. So they had their appointed snooper, even at street level, to be vigilant about anyone who they thought might not be completely on board with the National Socialist program. So the Socialist Party had been outlawed very quickly, existed secretly, had its offices abroad, and they compiled reports assessing public opinion. So the Gestapo tried to clamp down on them. Now, the polycratic regime, as I adumbrated was possibly part of Hitler's divide and rule strategy, or was it just sheer incompetence, idleness, and inconsistency for him? He was not a details man. Things were not on his radar screen that should have been, and that's why the situation was anarchic. Despite the impression of order and centralization that this control freak government had, with serried ranks of tens of thousands standing in rapt attention to Hitler's rantings, in many respects it was a very disorderly system. Right, so let's see about the methods of rule. Well, the greatest period of chaos that Germany's ever known was one historian's judgment. So authority deriving from the Führer, and that's why people talked about working towards the Führer. Anyway, let's leave it there for the moment. That's probably enough about the police state.